Ladies and gentlemen, Joh Bjelke-Petersen. You recognize the signature tune?
Yes, thank you.
Peanut Vendor.
Thank you, Michael. Very nice. Nice to be welcome this way. Thank you for your invitation. That's nice, Michael.
I am, in fact, I'm a visiting fireman, as you well know.
Yes,
so
yes.
all I know about you is what I read in the newspapers about you and in the files. And what seems to me to be interesting is that there's a great gap between what people think about you. Some people do regard you, as I said, being a power-mad megalomaniac. Okay. Others regard you as the most astute politician in Australia. Now, briefly, how would you describe yourself?
Well, not in the first reference, but I would say in the second one, yes, I think that would be correct, because I've been here...
The most astute politician in Australia.
Yes, I've been here a long time. I've outlived a number of prime ministers, and of course I appreciate the fact that the people of Queensland have been very good to me. They supported me and my government very, very strongly.
What is it you've got then, do you think, Mr. Premier, if you are the most astute politician in Australia, what the others haven't got?
Well, I think one of the things, Michael, is that I always seek to do what I believe is right and what the people want and expect, and I find that works well. I also believe that you've got to give positive government. You've got to give the type of government that encourages enterprise, progress and development, secure government, and the type of government in whom people have confidence. Always say what you believe, and then, well, stick to it. That's simple as that.
What guides you, though, on deciding what you believe to be right, Mr. Premier?
Well, I think you, Michael, and I, myself, we've all got within us ideals and objectives and beliefs and understanding. I've been in politics a long time, and 33 years, and in that sense, I think I can I speak as I believe the political scene or the requirements of the state and government required.
But where do your political beliefs come from? I mean, how much is due to your religious upbringing?
Well, I think quite a lot, Michael. I think my whole background, I wouldn't like to have had it any differently. Very difficult in the early years, as you know if you've read that book of Hugh Lund sets out a little of it. But I think all that, one's parents, and that I think has a very big influence, has had a big influence on my life. There's no question about that.
Going back to this thing about being the most astute politician in Australia then, what is wrong with the other politicians in your view?
Well, what's wrong with them is that they're not right.
do you mean, Mr. Premier, not right-wing or not right?
Well, they're wrong in their assessment of many situations, Michael. They haven't the ability to assess, well, what they ought to do, and sometimes when they know what they ought to do, they don't stick to it, because I think politically there's more votes that way, and I don't do that in politics.
Could you give an example of that?
Well, I think the just recent one where you had that Terminacy Act that we brought in.
The abortion.
Yes, the abortion bill. They all thought it was right. They all formulated it. For 9 months they, as it were, built a house, made that bill just the way they adjusted, altered, changed it. Every one of them. Every single one of them. And then, of course, as the day grew closest, within the last 2 weeks, some of them began to have doubts on account of the pressures of certain sections of the community. And then they got up in the House and they said, one after the other. And I sat and listened to them, and I was amazed. They said, I want to make it abundantly clear that I don't believe in abortion on demand, but my conscience won't let me support this bill, the bill that they themselves had created. And so they started to pull it to pieces. That's the type of politician. I'm not one of those. We keep going ahead once you made up your mind.
They would say, of course, I assume, that they made a moral judgment. They changed their mind, perhaps, which is they're perfectly entitled to do on an issue such as this.
Yeah, well, Michael, why weren't they able to assess their moral judgment in the first place? There must have been, a little bit. How would you describe it? They assessed it as their moral right and responsibility the first instant, and then they changed it. They evidently can't make very clear judgments, can they?
You're suggesting, Mr. Premier, then, that they made their change of heart out of political expediency.
No doubt about that. You asked.
You really believe that?
Sure.
But then, isn't there, when you come into an issue like this, it's a very emotive issue, the abortion thing, hasn't there got to be doubt in everybody's mind? Nobody knows if they're right on this issue. Not even you, Mr. Premier.
Well, we believe certain things on that basis. We believe we know what is right. But on the other hand, these people did too. For 9 months, they believed that they were right in doing what they did, in formulating that bill, adjusting, changing it. They believed they were right, very strongly so. And if you could have seen and heard them, just a few initially, and then towards the end a few more. And of course the last day, they went by the board one after the other.
You had suggested, I think, earlier on that they changed their mind because of pressure from outside. I would imagine you mean by that the various pressure groups who were opposed to the proposed legislation. You wouldn't actually call those groups, would you, politically motivated?
The groups outside?
Yes.
Well, if you saw them, you'd have a pretty good idea who they were and what they were. A lot of them.
A lot of women.
Yes. Is that... Yes,
Well, I think it's a very important point when you're discussing abortion,
well,
Mr. Premier.
Sure. I'm not arguing about that. I just was thinking when you mentioned that, the ones that clenched the fist and called revolution, down with the religion and so on, they're the ones you refer to, aren't they?
Well, no, there were also, I saw some news, there were shots of a lot of women there.
Yeah.
I'm concerned, I think,
There were a lot.
properly so. I mean, I'd like to put the point to you. Do you think that you might have a different notion yourself, idea about abortion if you were a woman?
Well, every member of Parliament tried to assess it correctly, and there were several women in the government that had quite a deal to say about it. And as I said, everybody sought to bring about a fair and a great and a just situation. And there were quite a lot of improvements that were carried out. For example, the clause that said over the years, from a long time back, that there were 7 years penalty for the girl or the woman who brought about a self-inflicted abortion. Some states are 10 years, 20 years, one's life imprisonment, another's 7. So we were quite low. So we eliminated that, but
yes,
the people in their turmoil in the House, in their confusion, they refused to let that go through. So it still stands in Queensland that there's a 7-year penalty. But of course, no doctor attempts to use that. But that's just one indication. We tried to, actually, as I said, create a better situation. The interesting thing, Michael, is that I don't think any of the public would have an idea of what's in that bill, because it was so misrepresented, so many untruths told about it by members of Parliament and by the media. Not you, Michael, you wouldn't do it, I know that.
No, but the basic, no, but I did read enough of it to understand. I mean, it's a simple basic issue, Mr. Premier, is it not? It's about who has the right to decide to have an abortion.
Yes.
I would have thought myself, and I don't know whether the audience here would agree, that can only be decided by the woman herself.
Well, she certainly has perhaps the main say, or the main responsibility lies with the woman, that's sure.
The total responsibility.
Well, again, that's has always been debatable over the years. Churches and many other sections, I think we had about 80,000 women petitioned the government to do something about it in Queensland that came to me. And so you see there's, as you know very well, it's a very difficult question to say this only is the situation.
You see,
there's two sides.
Yes, I mean, one always tries in a situation like this to put oneself in that predicament.
Yeah,
and
right.
You're a father, and so am I. What would your attitude be if one of your daughters became pregnant and she didn't want the baby?
Well, again, I naturally would never expect that to happen. But
No, we have to. No, we have to accept, Mr. Premier, that I mean, getting pregnant is not the prerogative of the working class. No, we're not scoring points. I mean, princesses are as likely to become pregnant as a coal-miner's daughter.
Yeah, that's true. I appreciate that situation. Of course, today there's a greater, perhaps you may term it, problem in that regard, Michael, when 1 in 4 today in Australia, pregnancy is aborted. And that is about the highest as high as any part of the world. And our population is at zero growth, and it's quite apart from that, there is, as I indicated, and to us, or to many people, the moral issue associated with this. In olden days, of course, when all the acts were made, it was considered very seriously as the penalties that are on the books today, even today in the various states, indicate just that. But, of course, the government carried the bill to a certain point, was supported by most of the people in the House, right up until towards the end. There were a number of votes in the House, and at one stage, at the beginning, all the members, bar 1 or 2, supported. Then it drifted down 2-1 on the government side of the bill that they'd prepared, and as the day went on, it drifted right down to 40.
Do you regard what's happened as being a defeat for you?
No, that's it was a defeat for the government. The members themselves that brought in the bill, and they were the ones that formulated the ministers in the government, in the cabinet. They and the rest of the rank and file, they were the ones who defeated their own bill. There's no question about that.
Let's move on from this issue, but into something that you raised there again about demonstration, about political demonstration.
Yes.
It was once said of you by an eminent Australian, actually, critic in London, that you were the only man he knew who had been given the freedom of the City of London, but denied his citizens the same right in Brisbane. What is your, broadly speaking, your attitude toward what people regard as being a basic human right, that to march in the streets and demonstrate?
Yeah, well, it's not anybody's right, Michael, as you would, I'm sure, acknowledge, to take over the streets from the rights of the majority of the people.
But it's anybody's right, Mr. Premier, to have an orderly march.
Yes, but they're not orderly, and it's not orderly if you go down against the oncoming traffic at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You can't have an orderly march. And they were not for that purpose. They were, and there's only one group. There's about 133, I think, marches a year of an average in Brisbane and Queensland that take place, and nobody objects. That's traditional. But there's just one group, the one who preach violence and advocate the overthrow of government by revolution, who print all this literature. It's that group, it's the only group that we...
What I'm interested in finding out, Mr. Premier, is how you make the judgment about who to allow on the streets and who not to.
Well, I think I ought to enlighten you, Michael. The police determine that.
But obviously the police is an arm of the Parliament, an arm of the state.
Yes, this is sure. This is sure.
And what they did will be done with your approval.
Well, they make the assessment of each application, and as I said to you, I think all bar one group are permitted to or get a permit. This group, who invariably even don't apply for a permit, who just sort of say, we're going to march. Now, if you live in a society as we live, and are privileged to live in today, surely there are certain guidelines that you must observe. I see you're nicely dressed tonight, Michael. You've tried to conform. And so I think every one of us who want to enjoy the society, we've got to at least conform. You know, last night I was flying in here to Sydney about 10 o'clock, and I got out there, and my civil liberties, and I felt that I was entitled to come into Sydney, and the control tower man said, no, you're not coming in, you've got to circle and hole up there. So there we circled around outside Sydney about 50 miles. I had to conform, and I didn't object, I realised that. Because I had to conform to the rules of the game, and that was that I couldn't get in here and block up the traffic of the big airliners. I had to hold outside.
But you weren't banned from landing, Mr. Premier, which is a different thing. No, I mean, let's take on the point of conformity. I can see that you are, your record speaks for itself. You are somebody who likes apple pie order.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't like apple pie order. I like people to act responsibly, one towards the other. And this group, 500 or 600, they want to...
Do they go under a name, Mr. Premier? Have they got a name?
No, but you can recognise them every day because they're always there. And they usually carry a red flag with a hammer and a sickle. A lot of them do that.
But what causes do they espouse?
Well, that's you look at the flag and you know.
No. But I mean, they don't walk down the street the Joseph Stalin Society, do they?
Well, they walk down, many of them, with a flag, and everybody knows that in Sydney. And because you can't load uranium in Sydney, we've got to load it in Brisbane for you because you can't. That's the same. Same society.
Well, I was going to ask you about this. The people who are opposed to mining uranium, would they be the conservationists who object to your plans to drill for oil in the Barrier Reef?
No. That's got nothing to do with the marches. We don't drill for Barrier Reef.
No, I know you don't, but I mean, there's been talk of it, and there's been conservationists who have been very concerned about it. Would this group that you've been talking about, would they belong to these conservationists?
Well, I wouldn't know who they belong to, other than the fact that they have that flag, so many of them, and their literature sort of indicates quite clearly who they are, the type of attitude they've got. And I think in the society, Michael, we've got to acknowledge that if you're going to hold or keep the society, and we've all enjoyed a high standard of living, the highest in the world, you can't get better. Then you've also got to recognise that you've got to look after it, you've got to protect it, and you can't let other people who want to create chaos in a city take over the city.
There is another point of view too, of course, which would say that what democracy is about the eccentricity of the individual.
Yes.
And the right to protect that individual's right of speech, no matter how stupid you might think it. The message is uttering. And it seems to me that you're saying the opposite of that.
No,
you're taking an elitist viewpoint of it.
Michael, There are several places in Brisbane where they can assemble, they can go on TV, they got plenty of places. I don't think you would have them on your show, Michael, but they get plenty of TV.
I've had a few on my show, don't you worry.
Have you really?
Absolutely.
Oh, Michael, you surprised me.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, why? Why did I surprise you?
No, I'm only joking.
Let's go further on from that then.
Yeah.
On the whole style of government of yours, I mean, you do lay yourself open, do you not, to the charge of being dictatorial?
Well, Michael, I would say the people are the best judge of it. Why do they support me so strongly? Why the Liberal Party are the minority party in Queensland? We are strong, and the people support us, and wherever I go I get a big audience, and they support us strongly. And you know, at the last few elections, there are hundreds. There are tremendous demonstrations in the street. They've attempted to make an election issue, and because they've broken the law, as you would have seen on TV, I'm sure you would if you have time to watch it sometimes. You'd see many of them were taken off and put in. Well, they were charged, and yet we get a bigger majority than ever. Why do people vote for us? They're pretty discerning, and they support the government because they know the government that I'm privileged to lead is doing the right thing by the majority of the people, and that's to try and protect their rights as against the supposed rights of a few people.
When you went in pursuit, and I think that's not too strong a word, of Mr. Gough Whitlam, when he came to power in Australia, what was your purpose in that? Was it the same thing, the same sense of maintaining law and order in Australia?
Well, no, it wasn't quite that. Partly. The main point, of course, Michael, I live and I think talk politics. I was in contracting business with heavy equipment and making more money in a couple of days than I could make out of a whole year as a member of Parliament in those days. But they talked me into standing for Parliament because I was well known and had a pretty good record. But then, as I got into politics, and I've been there 33 years, I learned to know exactly what it is all about, what politics is all about. And so I've come to a deep appreciation that there are attempts and efforts made to change it.
But what do you object to in Mr. Whitlam's change? Well,
he moved very rapidly, Michael, to clear the decks for a different, as I saw it, that's my belief. We changed the Commonwealth note to an Australian note and to the national anthem, got rid of that, and the Commonwealth police to the Australian police. They took the pictures of the Queen away and all sorts of things. And to me, who lived and thinks and talked politics for so long, the signs were clear, completely clear. And then, of course, that led to the attempts that, the moves that were made, that I counted by getting Sir Robert Askin here of Sydney and Dick Amer of Victoria, Jack Tonkin of Western Australia, the Labor Premier, Don Dunstan's deputy, even let him come over with me, would you believe it? And then there's Eric Rees's deputy from Tasmania. We all went to London and said we didn't want a viceroy, we don't want to change our system of government to a republic. It all led up to that one point. And I played, I believe, a very key role in that whole operation.
You brought him down, in fact, you think, don't you?
No, I didn't seek to break him down. It's his policy that I objected to, not him. And I was aware of the policies that were taking place and the changes that were coming about.
Did he, in this time, did he sense that you were after him? Did he try and court you?
Well, I always got on very well with Mr. Whitlam. I had lunch with him at the Government House many times. He very kindly invited me there, and he did everything to try and win me. He had tremendous persuasive powers in that way. I would rather perhaps been free and more relaxed. I remember the first time, Michael, we went up to Government House when I was to have lunch with him. We went up to the table, and he said to me, "Well, now, Joe, you sit on the right-hand side of me, will you please? I don't sit on the left-hand side of me. We don't want any arguments about left-wing controlled unions while we're having lunch." And he did all these sort of things, many others. And I remember once when we had a big conference in Canberra, a huge room full of people, and he put his arms on my shoulder and led me down the corridor with Bob Askin and Sir Robert and Sir Henry Bolte behind me, and they should have been before me. The doors open, there I stood with Mr. Whitlam's hand around my shoulder to everyone's astonishment. But he tried hard, and I used to tell him, "It's not you, Gough, it's your jolly policies I can't agree with."
He called you a Bible-bashing bee.
Well,
what did you think about that?
He came up and had lunch with me at different times, and I would like to see Mr. Fraser come up and do that. He hasn't been there yet, but I think he'll come. And he tried to convince me that he was a good fellow and his policies were right, but I could discern what it was all about, and I was right, because at that point of time, Canberra still weren't well awake to what was happening. They just couldn't see it. I went all around Australia, all the capital cities, and I said, Michael, I don't know where you were at the time, but they said, Australians, wake up, you're on a dangerous course with these people. And I pursued it and pursued it and pursued it. People laughed. A few years later, of course, they had me back around the capital cities, these businessmen here, and I addressed hundreds of businessmen in Sydney. And I said, you were the fellows, all pointing to the audience of hundreds of stock exchange people and others that I addressed here. You're the ones who put him there. Now you're frightened and now you're asking me what to do, come and talk to you what to do. And so I said, it's about time you get up and do something about it. And so these are the things. That's politics. It's right in the past, though, Michael. I'm only telling you so because I don't think you were here.
Have you ever been wrong?
Well, can you tell me where I've been wrong?
I wasn't around at the time. Do you think you have?
Well, I think the electorate back home have they've always said or always believed that and supported me strongly. And I can't think of any occasion where I would do anything differently to what I've done today. That's, of course, in the background, but we pursue an objective, and that's to give good government. Do
you stay in power and stay in the job and in politics because you are frightened of what might happen if you leave?
Well, I know there will be big changes when I leave, that's sure, and nobody can stay there forever, that also is sure. And I believe that each of us have a responsibility to play a part. All I'm concerned about, Michael, that we've enjoyed a good life, a tremendous life. Many people in the poorer countries, and the ambassador from Pakistan said, our people think you're millionaires. You've got boats and cars and refrigerators, TV, the lot. And we are lucky, and we've enjoyed it. I want to leave it for my children that way and for other people's children, and all I want to do is to strive and keep it that way. And there are tremendous forces at work trying to change that system by the methods I told you before.
And you see yourself as the saviour or the protector of that system?
No, I don't see myself.
Or the protector of that system?
I'm part of a government. I'm one in a government. I'm the leader of the government, and such have a special responsibility. And I try and lead it along the way that so many people support, as I've indicated. There have been many prime ministers come and go in my time. I'm still there as premier. And that indicates that people will want the type of government we give and the support.
Joh Bjelke-Petersen, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.